have waited long enough. This is Do It Already, the podcast that gets you out of your head and into your power. We talk mindset, neuroscience, and the no BS truth about what it really takes to change your life starting now. Okay, so today we're talking about what fear actually is. It is something that we all feel. But here's the twist. What if fear is not always a stop sign? What if it is actually a big, glowing green light? The one that is screaming, yo, babe, you're on the right track. And I know that you are probably thinking, oh, okay, Paige, but if someone's chasing me with a knife, am I supposed to see that as a sign from the universe? Do I really want to be stabbed by a psycho? No, obviously not. That is danger. Danger. It's a totally different category. But the fear that I am going to be talking about today, it is that subtle internal freak out that hits right when you're about to level up. You get a new job offer. You think about moving cities. You decide to finally end that toxic relationship that you probably should have ended ages ago. And boom, your brain slams the brakes. But I'm scared. What if it doesn't work out? That right there is not a stop sign. That is your evolution calling. That is the sound of growth. Because here's the truth. Your brain hates change. It hates change. It is obsessed with comfort and predictability. It will feed you the same tired storylines over and over because it wants to keep you safe in that little bubble that you have outgrown. And that's why I love this acronym FEAR, F-E-A-R, false evidence appearing real. Fear is your mind showing you imaginary monsters trying to keep you from expanding into your greatness and potential. Obviously, I was listening to my man, Dr. Huberman, and he had this author on Steven Pressfield. He's the author of The Art of War. And he said it like this. The more important something is to your soul's evolution, the more resistance you will feel. And I want you to think about that. We think fear means danger. We think resistance means wrong path. But what if it's the opposite? What if the fear is actually the compass pointing you towards your next evolution? And Pressfield actually used this analogy, and I absolutely love this. He says, imagine a tree growing in a sunny meadow. The moment the tree appears, a shadow appears with it. That tree in that sunny meadow is your dream, your path, your purpose, okay? And the shadow that appears with it, that's your resistance. That's your fear, your excuses, your self-doubt. And the bigger the tree, the bigger the shadow. So what's that mean? The bigger the thing is towards your purpose in life, the more doubt and fear you're going to feel. But when that fear shows up in your mind and says, I can't do this, that's actually proof that you're standing in the doorway of something massive. That is not your cue to stop. That is your cue to keep going. Because fear doesn't show up when you're moving backwards. It shows up when you're walking straight towards the version of yourself who you've been avoiding becoming. And that's what I mean when I say fear is the compass. The stronger the resistance, the clearer the direction. Okay, so here's where we actually get into the science of this. So buckle up because I'm going to break it down for you. When you are feeling fear, especially fear of change, you are not broken or weak. You are just experiencing a biological reaction that's been hardwired into humans for survival. And our brains interpret change or threat, quote unquote threat, via your limbic system, particularly in your amygdala, which is this little almond-shaped structure in your brain that's associated with your emotional processing. You also interpret it in your hypothalamus. And this is what triggers your body's response. So, for example, this is what gives you the rapid heartbeat, sweaty palms, etc., and so forth. And I want to kind of paint a scenario for you so you can understand this. I want you to sit here and picture yourself as a professional athlete. You're about to play in the championship game, whether that be the Super Bowl, the NBA Finals, it doesn't matter. But you have trained for this. You are dialed in, but your adrenaline is pumping. Your palms are a little sweaty. Your heart is racing as they sing your national anthem. You're breathing heavy as you feel the energy of the crowd. But you're not scared. You're ready. You're pumped. You are alive. That scenario right there, your body feels those exact same sensations when you're terrified to take a leap in your life. The job, the move, the relationship, the risk. The only difference is how your brain labels it. One gets the tag, I'm thrilled, and the other gets the tag, I'm terrified. It is the same response, same sensations, just a different interpretation. And let's go one layer deeper here, because your brain evaluates every situation along two lines, and it's what scientists call valence and arousal. Balance means, is this good or bad? Arousal means, how intense is this feeling? So fear and excitement actually share the same neural building blocks. They light up similar brain regions in your head and trigger nearly identical body sensations. The only difference is your perception of the event. Essentially, how you're actually interpreting what's happening. So when you get that, oh my God, feeling before a big change, your brain isn't saying stop, it's saying pay attention. You're standing at the edge of something unfamiliar, and that edge is exactly where growth happens. Now, let's talk about the other sneaky player that most people overlook, your nervous system. And if you have not listened to my most recent episode on your nervous system, after you're done with this, go play that, because if you listen to it, you know that I could talk about this all day long. And like I said in my last episode, your nervous system's job is to keep you alive, not to help you evolve. Your nervous system thrives on predictability, the routine, the known, the familiar, even if the familiar freaking sucks. So that is why every time you go to make a big move that could expand you, your body freaks out. It hits that internal panic button, not because something is wrong, but because it's new. Your system's like, whoa, 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 hold up. We've never done this before, so this must be dangerous. But new doesn't mean dangerous. It just means different. That is why regulation is everything. Because if you don't calm your body is going to run the show. You're going to confuse discomfort with danger and back out of things meant to change your life. When you regulate through breath work, grounding, movement, meditation, honestly, whatever works for you, you're literally teaching your body, hey, we're safe in expansion. We can handle this. That is how you start to rewire yourself for growth instead of retreat. Okay, so now that you know what's actually happening inside of your brain and body, here is where we can shift back into our power. Because once you understand it, once you see it for what's really going on, you can finally work with it instead of fighting against it. So, how do we take back control and flip fear into excitement? Aside from the obvious, regulating your nervous system, which, let's be for real, you should be doing every day of your life, let's talk about what actually gets you from I'm terrified to I'm ready. Number one, you need to just chill out for a second. And I mean that seriously. I need you to stop and recognize the signal. If you are safe, like actually safe, like you're not being chased by someone with a knife, but suddenly your chest tightens or your stomach drops when something new comes in, that's not danger. That's your nervous system throwing a full-blown toddler tantrum because you're doing something unfamiliar. So instead of fighting it, feel it. Sit with it. Say this out loud. I'm safe right now. even while I feel scared. That's how you start retraining your brain. You're literally teaching your nervous system that you are not being chased by that person with a knife, but you're just standing at the doorway of something new. Number two, call it out exactly for what it is, not the truth of the situation, but a response to it. And I want you to say this. This is not my intuition saying something's wrong. This is fear saying something's new. Because here's the deal. Fear unspoken turns into sabotage. It festers. It convinces you to ghost, to overthink, to shrink. But when you call it out loud, when you name it, it loses its camouflage. It becomes clarity. You move from what if to watch me. Number three, stay open anyway. And this is the muscle, baby. This is the flex. This is where you actually rewire your brain for expansion. You don't run. You don't bolt. You stay. You breathe. You let it burn a little. Because whenever you expose yourself to the thing that you're afraid of, it loses its grip. That is the secret nobody talks about. Exposure kills illusion. Fear only has power when you avoid it. The moment you walk straight towards it, whether it's vulnerability, rejection, failure, whatever, it starts to dissolve because fear isn't real. It's not real. It's a story your mind built to keep you safe. And when you show your nervous system, see, we did this and we're still here, that story collapses. That is when expansion becomes your new baseline. Okay, I want to bring this home because I'm not just going to drop science and mindset. I want you to see this playing out in real life. And I want to start with somebody you might have heard of, Little Miss Oprah Winfrey. That Oprah, the media mogul, billionaire, literal empire builder. Even Oprah still feels fear. And the woman has enough money to literally pay people to feel it for her. Okay? But she still feels it. And she has actually talked about how when she is faced with something scary, a confrontation, a big risk, a new move, she asks herself these two questions. One, what's the worst that's going to happen here? And two, why do I fear the confrontation? And that's a whole flex on Oprah's part because whenever you actually stop to answer these questions, 99% of the time, the worst case is laughable. Maybe someone won't like you. Maybe it won't go exactly as planned. Okay, cool. Like you'll survive. You've survived way worse. And here's one thing I want you to add on. What am I actually gaining? Because I think that's the part that we forget. We obsess over what we might lose, the comfort, the control, the illusion of safety, instead of realizing what we might gain. Freedom, growth, alignment, purpose, peace. And I can guarantee you, when you compare those two lists side by side, what's the worst that could happen versus what can I gain, that gain list is going to always win. And since we're on the topic of using fear as fuel, I want to talk about Steve Jobs and his Stanford commencement speech for a second. And for the record, this one hits deep, so I really, really, really want you to listen closely. When Steve Jobs was just 17 years old, he read a quote that stayed with him his entire life. And that quote was, "If you live each day as if it were your last, someday you will most certainly be right." He said that ever since reading that line every single morning for over 30 years, he looked in the mirror and he asked himself the question, if today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I'm about to do today? And whenever the answer has been no for too many days in a row, I know I need to change something. Then he said something that completely reframes fear at its core. Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make the big decisions in life. Because almost everything, all external expectations, all pride, all fear of embarrassment or failure, these things just fall away in the face of death, leaving only what's truly important. Remembering that you are going to die is the best way I know to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose. You are already naked. There is no reason not to follow your heart. He then continued to explain how he had recently been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and essentially given 3 to 6 months to live. Thankfully, at that time, the doctors realized it could be cured with surgery. But here's what he had to say, and I am going to fully quote this. He said, "This was the closest I've been to facing death, and I hope it's the closest I get for a few more decades. Having lived through it, I can now say this to you with a bit more certainty than when death was a useful but purely intellectual concept. No one wants to die. Even people who want to go to heaven don't want to die to get there. And yet, death is the destination we all share. No one has ever escaped it. And that is how it should be, because death is very likely the single best invention of life. It is life's change agent. It clears out the old to make way for the new. Right now, the new is you. But someday, not too long from now, you will gradually become the old and be cleared away. Sorry to be so dramatic, but it is quite true. Your time is limited. So don't waste it living someone else's life. Don't be trapped by dogma, which is living with the results of other people's thinking. Don't let the noise of others' opinions drown out your own inner voice. And more important, have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. They somehow already know what you truly want to become. Everything else is secondary. And if that doesn't shake you awake, I honestly, I don't know what else will. And no, like, that speech is not morbid. It's clarifying, because he's not saying we're all going to die, so screw it. He's saying when you remember how temporary this life is, fear loses its teeth. And maybe that's the ultimate compass, right? Not fear itself, but what fear reveals, that you care deeply enough to risk everything for what's real. And Steve Jobs closed that speech with a phrase that he had seen on the back of the Whole Earth catalog when he was younger. The 4 words that became his mantra: stay hungry, stay foolish. And that's what this whole thing comes down to. Stay hungry for the life that actually lights you up. Stay foolish enough to follow it, even when it scares you. Because that's the truth. Fear is the loudest when you think you have something to lose: your image, your comfort, your identity, your plan. But when you zoom out and remember how small that fear actually is in the grand scheme of things, it becomes laughable. You realize you're already free. And that is when you start living from truth, not terror. That's when fear stops being a wall and starts being a compass. That is why Steve Jobs took risks that changed the world. From dropping out of college, getting fired from Apple, and coming back to effing reinvent it. He did not wait for fear to disappear. He used it as a signpost. So if Oprah can face fear by asking better questions, and Steve Jobs can use the reminder of mortality to choose courage over comfort, then what are we waiting for? Because fear is not your stop sign. It is your initiation. And the moment that you start interpreting fear as your body's way of saying, this matters, you win every single time. So the next time that you feel that lump in your throat, that tightness in your chest, that little voice whispering, what if I mess this up? Don't run. Smile. Because that's not your body saying stop. That's your body saying pay attention, this matters. That feeling it's proof that you're expanding. So take the step, send the message, start the thing. Because fear isn't your stop sign, it's your green light. Now stop waiting, start moving, and as always, go do it already. Okay, if you love this episode, follow Do It Already wherever you listen. Drop a quick review and a rating, and share it with somebody who's been stuck in their own head for way too long. And if you want more mindset resets, behind the scenes, or just a quick kick in the ass when you need it, come hang with me on TikTok and Instagram at Do It Already Podcast.